is Mr. Benson Okundi, who is the chair of ICPAK. More or less, we can remember over the last few years, we've had companies and firms going under over misappropriation of funds, others going on under receivership, and very many other things, and monies getting lost, people resigning over matters of corruption. Case in point, the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, actually suspended government officials over corruption. But now we want to know, are we this corrupt? And what can the accountants regulatory body do to ensure that? If I may say, or rather use colloquial language, we do not cook the books. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So let's just start us off with want to know, where do you think, today we are asking fellow Kenyans, where do you think we're failing in the fight against corruption?
Thank you very much. I think corruption is really embedded in our fabric, in our daily fabric. And I would say that it's become the norm in our country, which is very unfortunate. To a large extent, I think the failure emanates from lack of setting the tone at the top. When I say the tone at the top, it means basically walking the talk that we have already set and taking appropriate actions to those that are found to have been involved in corruption. I think we have failed as a country in the sense that the highest level of governance, be it at the public sector level, that is those with governance responsibilities, or at corporate level, they have not shown good example to people that work under them that corruption is bad. So the people that work under them has justified the corruption because their seniors do it. So I think if we set the tone at the top, by clearly stating that corruption is bad and leaving the talk itself, we'll be able to minimize and eradicate corruption significantly. But more importantly, taking action against those that are found to have been corrupt. Actually looking at the root cause of the corruption, taking action against those people to act as a deterrent to any potential people that may plan to get involved in corrupt activities.
So for you, corruption starts at the top. And because it starts at the top, it makes it more or less difficult to actually counter it. But it doesn't mean we cannot do something about it, does it?
No, it doesn't. We really have to do something about it. And by doing something about it is basically starting right from the top. By the top taking action, and the top ensuring that they actually live a life that is that doesn't have corruption. Because what's happening is that corruption has become justified as a way of life. Somebody would say that if Mr. X, who is my boss or is at the top, is corrupt and nothing has happened to him or to her, what about me? In whatever small form that I can be corrupt in, so that I can gain personally, I would be corrupt in it. So basically, we have to start acting right from the top. And when I say the top, it means anybody with a responsibility, a leadership responsibility, regardless of that level of responsibility, must really act and act against corruption.
Well, in a nutshell, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Before we get to discuss what the regulatory body ICPAK is doing in terms of accountancy and bringing transparency into it, we're going to look at what is happening in terms of inflation, where the rate of inflation has risen for the third month in a row to 7.8%, driven by higher cost of food and energy. Data from the Kenyan National Bureau of Statistics shows that apart from sugar, the cost of all other sampled foodstuffs increased by between 4% to 20%. As Ronald Willie reports, the cost of electricity marginally dropped during the month.
In the first 4 months of this year, the rate of inflation has been gradually increasing from 5.53% in January to 5.61% in February, and in March 6.31%. Latest figures show that the rate of inflation has further increased by 0.77 percentage points to stand at 7.08% this month. With the 3 consecutive increases in the rate of inflation, it remains to be seen whether it will be within the government's medium-term target band of between 2.5% and 7.5%. The data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics further shows that during the month, the cost of maize flour, potatoes, milk, cabbages, onions, and beans all rose up by up to 20%. Sugar was the only foodstuff whose price reduced. An increase in the cost of rent, charcoal, and electricity, powered by the marginal increase of the housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels shot up the index by 0.23%. Despite the mid-month increase in the cost of diesel, the transport index remained unchanged, probably helped by the 11 cents per litre reduction in the retail cost of petrol. The overall consumer price index is, however, up 10.5 points, while on average prices of goods and services have increased by 7.08% as compared to prices a year ago. Ronald Willie, Business Insight.
That's right, yeah.
Well, if you've just joined us, we're talking about fighting corruption. With me in studio is the chairman of ICPAK, Mr. Benson Okundi. Welcome. You'd already set the piece and told us, in your opinion, that corruption starts from the top, and if we change our leadership or the people who are driving this should actually live exemplary lives. But now let's come back. You pointed out that we have to live by example.
Sure. Yeah.
We've seen in the recent months companies and firms have lost a lot of monies. Others have gone under receivership, all because of misappropriation of funds.
That's right.
So as a regulatory body, what have you done to ensure that this does not happen? Because for that to happen, for monies to get lost, some accountants actually went through and audited these books.
That's right. I think that question puts the accountants basically on the spot, be it the accountants that prepare the books of accounts or the accountants that carry out the audit to provide independent assurance to third-party users of the financial statements. But let's look at it this way broadly. The governance role is not just the accountants themselves. We have the management, who may not necessarily be accountants. You could have the CEO or even the board of directors that could actually influence the books of accounts to the extent that they show positive results. Then we have the accountants who then prepare the books and also carry out the audit. I think a number of corporate failures that we have seen in the recent past in the country, to a large extent, are due to the pressure that comes from the shareholders or the stakeholders for better performance, and some are also purely due to the individuals that really want to enrich themselves. Now, as a profession, ICPAK regulates the accountants that are in the profession. What we have done in cases where our members have been involved directly, and those cases are reported to us, indeed, we've taken those cases through a disciplinary process. A disciplinary process which involves hearing and gathering evidence from our members and also from the people that are actually aggrieved in such cases. And we've taken disciplinary actions which range from either the members have been suspended or the members have been fined, and where they are practicing auditors, indeed their practicing certificates have actually been suspended for some time. Obviously, we have room to do much more because we can only regulate our members. And as I said earlier on, some of those cases involve those who are not members of the institute. So we work very closely with other regulatory bodies like CMA, Capital Markets Authority, who then have a chain to a role to regulate those who are not necessarily members of the institute.
Okay, institute.
Yes.
So how far can you go in meting out this disciplinary? What does it entail to errant members?
So long as it is a member of ICPAK and there's a complaint against us member, we take the member through a disciplinary process. So currently, our disciplinary process is one restricted to our members, those who are actually registered with ICPAK, and if there is evidence that they have actually been involved in misconduct or professional misconduct, we take appropriate action. I think it's worth pointing out that we have an independent disciplinary committee. A disciplinary committee is actually appointed and gazetted by the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, which is made up of very independent and competent individuals. So we subject them through that committee and, in accordance with our act, provide appropriate actions in line with the degree or the extent of professional misconduct.
So what is a maximum penalty per se for an errant member that has been found guilty of malpractice? Our
act is currently restrictive. In fact, we are reviewing the Accountants Act. The maximum penalty that we have at the moment is up to 100,000. But you'll agree with me that 100,000 Kenya shillings is peanuts. So we are in the process of reviewing the Accountants Act, and we want to make it punitive to the tune of 5 million Kenya shillings, to act as a deterrent. Before any accountant carries out an act of professional misconduct, they will have to think twice. Because a fine is just one side of it, but your practicing certificate can actually be withdrawn And if your certificate is withdrawn, it means you can actually not practice your profession. So basically, you lose the work that you do on a daily basis. So we are in the process of reviewing the Act and amending the Act so that the fines can be punitive enough to deter members from even thinking of carrying out an act of professional misconduct. But I think what's important also is just to broaden the range when we look at corporate failures. Because as I said, accounting is just but part of it. There are also pressures from those who are in governance, who may not necessarily be accountants. So those in governance must also be disciplined. And that's why we have bodies like Capital Markets Authority that comes handy to take the other chain of discipline as well, yeah.
Accountancy and governance going hand in hand.
Sure.
So as a stakeholder,
yeah,
what role have you played in the drafting of the 2015-2016 budget? And we've seen some of the stakeholders and other industry players have really said that for us to actually achieve the 2015-2016 budget,
yeah,
that is proposed to a tune of 2.2 trillion,
yeah,
we have to seal all the leakages in wastage, reduce foreign travel, and other office furniture and expenditures like that. From where you stand,
yes,
advice you've given to the relevant authorities,
sure,
and what you think should be done so that actually we do not have wastage in such a bigger budget that we have.
Thanks. Let me say that the proposed budget for 2015-2016 obviously is a very ambitious one. And I think as a country, it's rightfully so because of the infrastructural projects that we have in place and the mandate that we have to be able to make Kenya a better country. Coming back to ICPAK, in line with our role in accordance with the Accountants Act to advise the CS of National Treasury on matters of budget and financial management, we have submitted a very comprehensive budget submission. Our focus has been on streamlining the tax system because we believe that if the tax system is not streamlined, then obviously there will be leakages and even the tax collection is likely to be a challenge. So we've given submissions around streamlining the tax systems through looking at the current Tax Act to make it much more effective and much more efficient for better collection, retention of taxes. So that's number one. Also, our institute currently is taking a lead on the review of the capital gains tax, working with several stakeholders, those who are interested and are directly affected by the capital gains tax. We've formed I don't want to call it association, but we are a professional body or a professional wing to work with those bodies, like-minded bodies, together with the Treasury and KRA, to be able to come up with the recommendations that are aimed at streamlining the capital gains tax, because we believe that this is one of the taxes that when implemented successfully is likely to help the country achieve its budget of 2.2 trillion for 2015-2016. In addition to that, we've just taken a step back and looked at some of the challenges that have been experienced for the last couple of years with regard to the various tax initiatives that have been introduced in this country, the operation of the iTax system, for example, the VAT changes that were made last year, and we've made very comprehensive range of submissions to the CS Treasury, which we hope will be taken into account as the 2015-2016 budget will be read in the month of June. But also looking at the aspect of widening the tax, because we strongly believe that if the tax net is widened and we are able to reach to the informal sector, which is currently not being taxed as expected, in other words, contribute significantly to the economy but not being taxed, then we should be able to obviously generate much more revenue for the country through the tax system. So we've done a whole range of submission to the CS Treasury, ranging from the tax administrative process, review of the Tax Act, and just making recommendations to make the tax systems much more efficient.
Let me take you back to fighting corruption from where you stand as an institute. Apart from introducing punitive measures to members, errant members who are found practicing malpractice in accountancy. What else have you done to ensure that actually it is a case of the past? Apart from just measures, what else have you done? I
think we've carried out a comprehensive range of information and education through various fora. Through the seminars that we hold every year, we have a governance and ethics conference that we hold every year, and we target people in governance role or responsibilities to attend that seminar and conference. And we just look at the matters of corruption, the matters of governance in totality, and then come up with submissions, which then we submit to the various bodies that are responsible for governance and responsibilities. So that's number one. We've also advocated strongly that the oversight bodies that have a responsibility to be able to help curb corruption, and these bodies are Supreme Audit Institution, Kenya National Audit Office, for example, Office of the Controller of the Budget. We have advocated for them to be strengthened, and we've seen actually our actions being recommended gradually. The Public Audit Bill that has been proposed for the 2014 Public Audit Bill for the Supreme Audit Institution obviously advocates for much more autonomy in terms of their resources for the Supreme Audit Institution, because we believe that this is one institution that when strengthened properly is likely to help us curb corruption. Then thirdly, we are asking employers, when they employ somebody as an accountant, they need to confirm that that person is a member of ICPAK. A professional accountant is one who is a member of ICPAK and in good standing. Good standing means that person has no any disciplinary case against him or against her. And the reason why we are advocating for this is because we cannot discipline those who are not our members. Currently, I must say that there are people who are practicing accountancy, but they are not members of the institute. According to us, those are not professional accountants. So we want to ask employers to take a responsibility of ensuring that anybody that carries out accountancy work in their organization are indeed members of the institute, so that we can be able to discipline them in the event that there are cases of professional misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Members who are members of the institute, can they practice overseas?
They can. The jurisdictions differ, for example, but we've come up with various arrangements with various professional bodies. I'll give you an example. In the UK, for example, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales has got a memorandum of understanding with ICPAK, which allows ICPAK members to carry out their jurisdiction or their professional mandate to some extent. While they will be expected to carry out minimum professional qualification before they can become full members, that memorandum of understanding indeed allows them to carry out other professional responsibilities, like, for example, work in corporations or in companies, but they will be restricted from signing assurance reports because they will not be issued with practicing certificates unless they meet some specific qualification criteria. We are working as a profession in Kenya to ensure that a member of ICPAK indeed is able to practice fully in any part of the world. That is really our medium-term to long-term objective. But as we work towards achieving that, which will involve looking at our qualification framework to ensure that we can be able to reciprocate with other professional bodies, accountancy bodies in other parts of the world, we have come up with several memorandum of understanding. Currently, we have about 3 of them. One is with South Africa, one is with the UK, one is with Zambia, and a number of them are still in the pipeline to come. However, within the East African community, a member of ICPAK can practice work freely in any of the East African community countries. The same thing applies also to the other countries within the ESC region.
Well, in closing, in terms of your role as an institute, what would you want to see going forward in the fight against corruption? In closing,
I think we really want to see stern action being taken by those that have been found responsible, because corruption is bad. Corruption is a vice. Corruption actually denies delivery of goods and services to the citizens. Corruption has the potential to cause civil strife because it widens the gap between the rich and the poor. So the action must be taken against those who have been involved in the corrupt activities. That's number one. We also want to educate Kenyans. I mean, as much as we have said corruption starts from the top and the tone at the top must be set properly. We individual Kenyans have a responsibility in our individual capacity to stop corruption. Once we know that it is bad, there is a giver and there is a taker. We need to stop it because corruption takes place in whatever simplest form that you can think about. So the responsibility is on us as individuals. It begins with us to stop it and do not advocate against, do not advocate for it. And then at the top, those with the responsibility to ensure that They live the talk, walk the talk, breathe the talk, and then take action against those who are involved. Yes.
Very well said. I'm not going to water that down. We've been challenged there to not advocate or advance corruption in whatever form, and we can actually get rid of that vice that is not only affecting our social lives but also our economy. There is a chair of the ICPAK actually, that is Mr. Benson Okundi. They're sharing his sentiments on the role that accountants have in the drive against and the fight against corruption. We shift gears and look at what is happening in the tech world with Ronald Willie, where they say, if it can be produced, it can be faked. That is the dilemma of most manufacturers face. Consumers are worst affected because they tend to be less aware of what is original or fake, or how to verify